The sickening crack of a wagon wheel breaking echoed through the vast expanse of the Wyoming Territory as Cassidy Reynolds fell forward onto the dusty trail, a sharp pain shooting through her abdomen. She doubled over, the scorching July sun of 1878 beating down mercilessly on her bonnet as she struggled to catch her breath. Miles from the nearest town with no water, no horse, and now no functioning wagon, Cassidy knew she was in serious trouble. The pain came again, fiercer this time, a reminder of the child she had lost 3 days prior, a tragedy that had driven her to flee the home she shared with her now deceased husband. Thomas Reynolds had been a cruel man, and his death during a saloon brawl had finally given Cassidy the opportunity to escape. But freedom had come with a price. The miscarriage on the trail had left her weak, dehydrated, and now stranded in the unforgiving wilderness. She clutched her stomach, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. The nearest town was Whispering Pines, at least 20 miles ahead. With no shelter from the relentless sun and barely a drop of water left in her canteen, Cassidy knew her chances of survival were dwindling by the minute. A cloud of dust in the distance caught her attention. Squinting against the harsh sunlight, she made out the silhouette of a rider approaching. Friend or foe, she couldn't tell, but in her desperate state, Cassidy had little choice but to hope for mercy. The horseman drew closer, the steady rhythm of hooves against the hard, packed earth growing louder. From beneath the brim of his worn Stetson, a pair of startlingly blue eyes assessed her situation. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the ground. "Madam." "You all right?" His voice was deep, tinged with concern. Cassidy tried to straighten up, another wave of pain forcing her back down. "My wagon, I need help," she managed to gasp out. The man knelt beside her, gently supporting her elbow. "Name's Jackson Blackwood, madam." "Most folks call me Jack. Let's get you some shade first." Without waiting for her response, he helped her to her feet and guided her to a small cluster of cottonwood trees just off the trail. The relief from the sun was immediate, though the pain persisted. "Water," he said, not a question but a statement as he uncorked his canteen and handed it to her. "Small sips now, too much too fast will make you sick." Cassidy nodded, taking careful sips of the life-giving liquid. It was cool, a blessing she hadn't expected in this heat. As her vision cleared, she got a better look at her rescuer. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a strong jawline softened by a well-kept beard. His clothing was dusty but of good quality, a blue cotton shirt rolled up at the sleeves, revealing tanned, muscular forearms and dark trousers tucked into well-worn boots. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice steadier now. "Jack," he corrected with a gentle smile. "And you are?" Cassidy Reynolds." She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal to this stranger. "I'm headed to Whispering Pines." Jack nodded, his eyes scanning her broken-down wagon. "That wheel is beyond repair and your horse looks to have run off." He frowned, noticing the paleness of her complexion and the way she held herself. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question, and Cassidy didn't bother denying it. "I'll be fine, I just need to rest a moment." Jack's gaze was skeptical, but he didn't press. Instead, he walked back to examine the wagon more closely. "You traveling alone, Mrs. Reynolds?" The Mrs. stung, a reminder of what she was leaving behind. "Yes, and it's Miss Reynolds now," she said firmly. "My husband is dead." Something flickered across Jack's face, understanding, perhaps. He nodded once. "I'm sorry for your loss." The words were automatic, but not unkind. "Miss Reynolds, my ranch is about 5 miles east of here. I can offer you shelter, food, and a chance to recover before continuing your journey." Cassidy hesitated. Accepting help from a strange man wasn't something she did lightly, especially after her experience with Thomas. But the pain in her abdomen was worsening, and she knew she had little choice. "I don't want to impose," she began weakly. "It's no imposition," Jack assured her, his voice gentle but firm. "I can't in good conscience leave a lady alone out here. You need medical attention, and my housekeeper, Mrs. Hernandez, is skilled with remedies. She can look after you while I make arrangements to get you to Whispering Pines once you're stronger." Cassidy studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or ill intent, All she found was genuine concern. With a small nod, she accepted his offer. "Thank you." "I'm grateful for your kindness." Jack helped her to her feet, his strong hands steady and respectful. "Can you ride? I'll need to come back for your belongings with the wagon." "I can manage," she said, determined not to appear completely helpless. Jack led her to his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion with intelligent eyes. "This is Thunder. He's gentle enough." With careful hands, he helped her into the saddle before mounting behind her, his chest a solid presence against her back as he reached around to take the reins. "Lean back if you need to," he said, his voice close to her ear. "I won't let you fall." The ride to Jack's ranch was a blur of pain and exhaustion for Cassidy. She was vaguely aware of passing through a stand of pines, crossing a small creek, and finally approaching a modest but well-maintained ranch house nestled in a valley surrounded by rolling hills. A corral with several horses stood to one side, and a barn and bunkhouse were visible beyond. As they approached, a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked black hair emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes widened at the sight of Cassidy. "Jack, que paso?" She hurried forward as Jack dismounted and carefully helped Cassidy down. "Mrs. Hernandez, this is Miss Reynolds. She was stranded on the trail with a broken wagon. She's unwell and needs care." The woman's sharp eyes took in Cassidy's pallor and the way she clutched her abdomen. With a nod of understanding, she stepped forward. "Come, señorita, let us get you inside." Cassidy allowed herself to be led into the house, the cool interior a blessed relief from the heat outside. Mrs. Hernandez guided her to a small but clean bedroom and helped her onto the bed. "Rest now," the housekeeper said kindly. "I will bring you something for the pain," as Mrs. Hernandez left the room. Cassidy caught a glimpse of Jack standing in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Their eyes met briefly before exhaustion claimed her, and she surrendered to the darkness. When Cassidy awoke, the room was bathed in the golden light of sunset. For a moment she was disoriented, the unfamiliar surroundings causing a spike of panic before memory returned. She was at Jack Blackwood's ranch, having been rescued from certain death on the trail. The door opened, and Mrs. Hernandez entered carrying a tray. "Ah, you are awake. Good. I have brought some broth and tea with herbs for healing." Cassidy struggled to sit up, wincing at the lingering pain. "Thank you, you're very kind." The older woman helped her sit against the pillows before placing the tray across her lap. "You have lost much blood, señorita. The tea will help strengthen you." Cassidy's hand stilled, the spoon halfway to her mouth. "You know what happened?" Mrs. Hernandez nodded, her expression compassionate. "I have tended many women in my life. Your body tells a story of recent loss." Tears welled in Cassidy's eyes. "I didn't want it, the baby. Is that terrible of me? Thomas, my husband, he was." She couldn't continue. "Not all men deserve to be fathers," Mrs. Hernandez said simply. "And not all women are ready to be mothers. There is no shame in your feelings." The words were like a balm to Cassidy's guilt-ridden heart. She sipped the broth, surprised at how hungry she suddenly felt. "Jack, Mr. Blackwood, is he?" Cassidy wasn't sure what she was asking. "He is a good man," Mrs. Hernandez assured her. "One of the few. He went back for your belongings and has been checking on you regularly. He worries." Cassidy nodded, relief washing over her. "How long have I been asleep?" "Nearly a day. Your body needed rest to heal." A soft knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Jack stood there, his tall frame filling the doorway. He had cleaned up, his hair still damp from washing, and had changed into a fresh shirt. "You're awake," he said, relief evident in his voice. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you," Cassidy replied, suddenly self-conscious of her disheveled appearance. Mrs. Hernandez patted her hand. "Finish your food, Nina. I will leave you two to talk." With that, she gathered her skirts and left the room, closing the door partially behind her. Jack remained by the door as if unsure whether to enter further. "I managed to salvage most of your belongings from the wagon. There wasn't much damage beyond the wheel itself. Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." Jack waved away her words. "No need for that. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Cassidy said firmly. "Not anyone, not in my experience." Something flashed in Jack's eyes, anger perhaps, but not directed at her. Your husband, he said carefully. He wasn't a good man, was he? Cassidy looked down at her hands. No, he wasn't. Jack nodded as if confirming something to himself. Well, you're safe here, Miss Reynolds. You can stay as long as you need to recover your strength. My ranch hand, Charlie, rides into Whispering Pines every week for supplies. He can take you when you're ready. I appreciate that. Cassidy hesitated, then asked, Do you live here alone, Mr. Blackwood? Besides Mrs. Hernandez and your ranch hands, I mean. A shadow crossed Jack's face. Yes, just me and the staff. I had family once, a wife and daughter. Yellow fever took them both 5 years ago. Cassidy's heart ached for him. I'm sorry, that must have been devastating. It was, he acknowledged quietly. Still is some days, but life goes on whether we want it to or not. He straightened, as if shaking off the weight of the memories. Rest now. We can talk more tomorrow if you're feeling up to it. With that, he left, closing the door softly behind him. Cassidy finished her meal, her mind filled with thoughts of the quiet, kind man who had saved her life and the tragedy he carried with him. Days passed, and Cassidy's strength gradually returned. Mrs. Hernandez proved to be a skilled healer, providing her with teas and poultices that eased her pain and helped her body recover from the trauma it had endured. Each day, Jack would check on her, their conversations growing longer and more comfortable as her health improved. On the 4th day, Cassidy felt well enough to venture outside. The morning air was crisp and clean, the vast Wyoming sky stretching endlessly above her as she sat on the porch, a quilt wrapped around her shoulders despite the summer warmth. Jack found her there, gazing out at the mountains in the distance. Good morning, he greeted, a smile warming his features. It's good to see you up and about. It feels wonderful to breathe fresh air again, Cassidy admitted. Your land is beautiful. Thank you. It was my father's before me and his father's before that. Blackwoods have been ranching this valley for 3 generations now. You must be very proud of what you've built here. Jack leaned against the porch railing, his gaze sweeping over the property. I am. Though it gets lonely sometimes, just me and a handful of ranch hands. He glanced at her. What awaits you in Whispering Pines, if you don't mind my asking? Cassidy sighed. Hope, I suppose. My aunt lives there, my mother's sister. We've not been close, but she's the only family I have left. I wrote to her after Thomas died, and she invited me to stay with her until I can find my footing. That's fortunate. Family is important, even distant family. Yes, though I barely know her. She and my mother had a falling out years ago. I'm not sure what kind of welcome I'll receive. Jack studied her for a moment. Well, there's no rush. You're welcome to stay here until you're fully recovered, and if things don't work out with your aunt, you could always. He trailed off, seeming to think better of what he was about to say. Cassidy looked at him curiously. I could always what? Jack cleared his throat. Come back here, if you needed a place to stay, I mean. Mrs. Hernandez enjoys having another woman around and the house feels more alive with you in it. The offer touched Cassidy deeply. That's very generous of you. It's selfish, really, Jack admitted with a self-deprecating smile. I've enjoyed our conversations. Before Cassidy could respond, a ranch hand approached, his expression urgent. Boss, we've got trouble with the north fence line. Looks like someone cut through it. Found tracks heading toward the east pasture. Jack's expression hardened. Rustlers? Seems likely. They could still be on the property. Jack nodded grimly. Get the men together. I'll join you in a moment. As the ranch hand hurried off, Jack turned back to Cassidy. I'm sorry, I need to handle this. Please stay close to the house. Of course, Cassidy assured him, concern evident in her voice. Be careful. With a nod, Jack strode toward the barn, his relaxed demeanor replaced by a determined focus that reminded Cassidy that beneath his gentle exterior was a man capable of protecting what was his. Mrs. Hernandez appeared at the door, her face tense. Come inside, señorita. It is safer. Cassidy followed the housekeeper inside, her mind filled with worry for Jack and his men. Does this happen often? Rustlers, I mean, not often, but it is not unheard of, Mrs. Hernandez replied, busying herself with kneading dough. The Blackwood cattle are known for their quality. Some men prefer stealing to honest work. Will they be all right? Mrs. Hernandez smiled reassuringly. Jack is no stranger to trouble. He and the men will handle it. Now, perhaps you can help me with these biscuits. It will keep your mind occupied." Grateful for the distraction, Cassidy rolled up her sleeves and joined the older woman at the table. As they worked, Mrs. Hernandez shared stories of her life in Mexico before coming north, of her late husband who had been the foreman at the Blackwood Ranch until his death 2 years prior, and of Jack's kindness in keeping her on as housekeeper afterward. "He is a good man, Mrs. Hernandez repeated, her dark eyes watching Cassidy carefully. "He has been alone too long. His heart is healing, but slowly." Cassidy felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "He's been very kind to me." "He looks at you differently than he looks at others," the housekeeper observed. "I have not seen that light in his eyes since Rebecca was alive." Before Cassidy could respond, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. They moved to the window to see Jack and his men returning, their expressions grim but unharmed. "They are back safely, Mrs. Hernandez said with relief. "Come, we will finish the biscuits and make coffee. They will be hungry." The men filed into the large kitchen a short while later, dust-covered and weary. Jack's face brightened slightly when he saw Cassidy, though the tension didn't fully leave his shoulders. "Did you find the rustlers?" Cassidy asked as she poured coffee into mugs for the men. Jack shook his head. "They were gone before we got there. Took 3 of my best breeding cattle. We followed their trail to the creek, but they split up there." He accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. "Thank you. Will they come back? Possibly. I've sent word to the sheriff in Whispering Pines, but by the time he gets here, those cattle will be long gone." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We'll double the night watch for a while." As the ranch hands discussed strategies for protecting the herd, Cassidy couldn't help but notice how naturally Jack led them. His suggestions firm but open to input from the men who clearly respected him. When the discussion concluded, the men dispersed to their tasks, leaving Jack alone with Cassidy and Mrs. Hernandez. "I'm sorry our conversation was interrupted earlier," Jack said, his voice softening as he addressed Cassidy. "There's no need to apologize. Your ranch comes first." Jack studied her for a moment. "Would you like to see more of it? The ranch, I mean. If you're feeling up to a short ride, I could show you around this afternoon." Cassidy's heart lifted at the suggestion. "I'd like that very much." A genuine smile broke across Jack's face. "Good. I'll have Charlie saddle a gentle mare for you after lunch." True to his word, Jack arranged for a docile chestnut mare named Penny to be saddled for Cassidy. After ensuring she was comfortable on horseback, they set out, Jack leading the way on Thunder. "We'll take it slow," he promised, keeping his stallion at a walk beside her mare. "Just let me know if you need to rest." The afternoon was perfect for riding, the summer heat tempered by a gentle breeze. Jack guided her through meadows of wildflowers, along a bubbling creek where trout jumped for insects, and up to a ridge that offered a breathtaking view of the entire valley. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Jack confessed as they dismounted to rest the horses. "I come here to think, especially when decisions need making." Cassidy moved to the edge of the ridge, taking in the panoramic view. The ranch house looked small from this height, nestled in its valley like a child's toy. Beyond it, cattle grazed peacefully in verdant pastures, and the distant mountains shimmered purple in the afternoon haze. "It's magnificent," she breathed. "I can see why you love it here." Jack stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "After Rebecca and little Sarah died, I considered selling up, moving somewhere else where the memories weren't so thick. But this land, it's in my blood, I couldn't leave it." "I'm glad you didn't," Cassidy said softly. "It would be a shame for a place this beautiful to pass out of your family." Jack turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense. "Cassidy, I know we've only known each other a short while, but I want you to know that if things don't work out with your aunt in Whispering Pines, my offer stands. There's plenty of room at the ranch, and Mrs. Hernandez would welcome the company." Cassidy's heart raced at his words and the earnest expression on his face. "That's very kind of you, Jack, but I wouldn't want to impose. It wouldn't be an imposition," he interrupted gently. "The truth is, the house has felt more like a home these past few days than it has in years. Your presence, It brings light back into spaces that have been dark for too long. Cassidy was speechless, touched by his candor and the vulnerability behind his words. "I'm not asking for anything," Jack continued, his voice low. "Just offering you a safe place if you need it. No obligations, no expectations." "Thank you," Cassidy managed, her throat tight with emotion. "That means more to me than you know." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching an eagle soar on thermals high above them. Then, by unspoken agreement, they mounted their horses and began the journey back to the ranch house, each lost in their own thoughts about the unexpected connection forming between them. The following days fell into a pleasant routine. Cassidy's strength continued to improve, and she found herself increasingly involved in the daily life of the ranch. She helped Mrs. Hernandez with the cooking and household chores, learned to collect eggs from the ornery hens in the coop, and even tried her hand at vegetable gardening under the housekeeper's patient tutelage. Each evening, she and Jack would sit on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset and talking. He told her about his childhood on the ranch, about meeting Rebecca when she came to teach at the local schoolhouse, and about the joy and heartbreak of their brief years together. In turn, Cassidy shared stories of her own life, her childhood in Illinois, her parents' deaths from influenza when she was 16, and her hasty marriage to Thomas, a traveling salesman who had seemed charming until the wedding ring was on her finger. "He changed so quickly," she confided one evening, her voice low. "The first time he hit me was barely a week after our wedding. I'd burned his breakfast." Jack's hand tightened on the arm of his chair, his knuckles white. "Did you have no one to turn to?" Cassidy shook her head. "No family left, and Thomas made sure I had no friends when I found out I was with child." She swallowed hard. "I was terrified, afraid of what kind of father he would be, afraid of bringing an innocent life into such a home. So when he died—" "I felt relief," Cassidy admitted, shame coloring her words. "What kind of person feels relief at their husband's death?" "A person who has suffered," Jack said firmly. "There's no shame in being grateful for freedom from cruelty." His understanding loosened something in Cassidy's chest, a knot of guilt she had carried since Thomas's death. 3 days later, the pains started. By the time I left town, I knew I had lost the baby. Part of me was still relieved, and that made me feel even worse. Jack reached across the space between their chairs, taking her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip gentle but secure. "You deserved better than what life has given you so far, Cassidy Reynolds. Much better." The sincerity in his voice brought tears to her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen and understood. 2 weeks after her arrival at the Blackwood Ranch, Charlie was preparing for his weekly trip to Whispering Pines for supplies. The time had come for Cassidy to decide whether to continue to her aunt's as planned or to accept Jack's offer to stay longer at the ranch. "Charlie leaves at dawn tomorrow," Jack mentioned casually as they walked back from the barn after checking on a new foal. "If you're still planning to go to Whispering Pines, he'd be happy to have your company on the journey." Cassidy nodded, her heart conflicted. "Yes, I suppose I should. My aunt is expecting me." Jack's face remained carefully neutral. "Of course, it's important to honor commitments." They walked in silence for a few moments before Cassidy gathered her courage. Unless there's a reason I should stay." Jack stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The setting sun cast his features in gold, highlighting the hope and hesitation in his eyes. "I can think of several," he said quietly, "but they would all be selfish reasons." "Tell me anyway," Cassidy urged, her heart hammering in her chest. Jack took a deep breath. "Because in the short time you've been here, you've brought warmth and laughter back to a home that has known too little of either. Because Mrs. Hernandez smiles more now, and even the ranch hands have noticed the change in the atmosphere. Because I look forward to our evening conversations more than anything else in my day." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "Because I think I'm falling in love with you, Cassidy Reynolds, and the thought of you leaving makes my heart ache in ways I thought it never would again." Cassidy's breath caught at his declaration. Part of her wanted to throw caution to the wind, to stay at the ranch and explore the feelings growing between them, But another part, the practical part that had survived Thomas's abuse, urged caution. Jack, she struggled to find the right words. I care for you too, more than I thought possible after everything with Thomas. But I'm still healing, not just my body, but my heart and my trust. And you still carry Rebecca and Sarah with you. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. I do, I always will in some ways. But I've realized that loving them doesn't mean I can't love again. My heart has room for both the memory of what was and the hope of what could be. He took her hands in his touch gentle. I'm not asking for promises, Cassidy, just time. Time for both of us to heal, to learn each other, to see if what we're feeling can grow into something lasting. Cassidy looked up at him, this kind, honorable man who had saved her life and shown her that not all men were like Thomas. I think I'd like that, she whispered. To stay, I mean. For a while longer. The smile that broke across Jack's face was like sunrise after a long night. I'm glad, he said simply, lifting one of her hands to his lips in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and achingly tender. As they continued their walk back to the house, Cassidy felt a sense of peace settle over her. She would write to her aunt, explaining the situation and promising to visit soon. But for now, the Blackwood Ranch felt more like home than anywhere had in a very long time. The decision to stay changed something between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first day on the trail. Jack was careful not to rush her, mindful of her recent trauma and the wounds, both physical and emotional, that were still healing. But there was a new openness to their interactions, a shared understanding that they were exploring the possibility of a future together. July faded into August, and the ranch bustled with activity as preparations for the fall cattle drive began. Cassidy found herself increasingly involved in the daily operations, learning about breeding records from Jack, helping with the accounts, and even assisting when one of the mares gave birth to a difficult foal. You have a natural way with the animals, Jack observed one afternoon as they watched the foal nurse for the first time, and a steady hand in a crisis. Cassidy smiled, pleased by his praise. I never thought I'd enjoy ranch life so much. In the city, everything feels confined, boxed in. Here, there's room to breathe, to think, to heal, Jack added softly. She nodded, understanding his meaning. Yes, that too. Their relationship progressed gradually with respect and care on both sides. The first time Jack kissed her was on a warm August evening as they returned from a ride to the creek. It was a gentle kiss, questioning rather than demanding, and Cassidy found herself responding with a passion that surprised them both. When they finally broke apart, Jack rested his forehead against hers, his breathing uneven. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, he confessed. Cassidy smiled, her fingers tangled in the fabric of his shirt. What took you so long, Cowboy? His laugh was low and warm. Patience. Some things are worth waiting for. As summer began to wane, bringing cooler nights and the first hints of gold to the aspen leaves, Cassidy made the trip to Whispering Pines with Jack to meet her aunt. Constance Miller was a stern-faced woman with kind eyes who welcomed them into her modest home with reserved courtesy. So this is the cowboy who rescued my niece, she said, studying Jack with shrewd assessment. I suppose I should thank you for taking such good care of her. It's been my pleasure, madam, Jack replied with the quiet dignity that Cassidy had come to admire. As they shared tea in Aunt Constance's parlor, Cassidy explained their growing relationship and her decision to remain at the Blackwood Ranch for the time being. Her aunt listened without interruption, her expression thoughtful. Well, she said finally, setting down her teacup with a decisive click. I can't say I'm not disappointed that you won't be staying with me, Cassidy, but I understand the appeal of ranch life and a handsome rancher. Her eyes twinkled briefly at Jack. Your mother would have approved, I think. She always did have a weakness for men with integrity. The visit ended with an invitation for Aunt Constance to spend Christmas at the ranch, which she accepted with what Cassidy suspected was hidden delight. As they rode back, Cassidy felt another piece of her life falling into place, another connection restored. Your aunt is quite a character, Jack commented as they crested the ridge that would lead them home. She is, Cassidy agreed. Formidable but fair. I think she likes you. Jack grinned. High praise indeed from what you've told me of her. They rode in companionable silence for a while, the afternoon sun warm on their backs. When the ranch came into view in the distance, Jack drew his horse to a halt, prompting Cassidy to do the same. "What is it?" she asked, noticing the serious expression that had settled on his face. Jack dismounted, then moved to help her down from her horse. Once they were both standing, he took her hands in his eyes intent on hers. "Cassidy, these past weeks have been the happiest I've known in 5 years. Having you at the ranch, seeing your smile each morning, talking with you each evening, it's changed everything for me." Cassidy's heart began to race, recognizing the significance of his tone. "It's changed everything for me too, Jack," he nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I know it's still early. I know we both carry scars that are still healing, but I also know, with more certainty than I've felt about anything in a long time, that I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your resilience. I love the way you hum when you're gathering eggs, and how you laugh when the barn cats chase each other, and how you stand up to Charlie when he tries to sneak extra helpings at dinner." Tears filled Cassidy's eyes as Jack continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm not asking for an answer today, but I want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I want to make a life with you. A real life as husband and wife, building something lasting together on this land." Cassidy blinked back her tears, overwhelmed by the depth of feeling his words evoked. "Jack, he squeezed her hands gently. "You don't need to say anything now. Take all the time you need. I'll be here." But Cassidy shook her head, a smile breaking through her tears. "I don't need time, Jack Blackwood. I love you too. I think I have since that first day when you found me on the trail and offered me water and kindness when I needed it most." Joy spread across Jack's features, lighting his blue eyes from within. "You're sure?" "Even with all my ghosts and cattle and early mornings," Cassidy laughed, the sound free and light. "Especially with all of those things. They're part of who you are, and who you are is the man I love." Jack pulled her close then, his kiss deeper and more certain than before. When they finally broke apart, breathless and smiling, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I promise you, Cassidy Reynolds, that for as long as I live, you will never know the kind of fear or pain that you knew with Thomas. I will protect you, respect you, and cherish you every day." "I know," she whispered, believing it with her whole heart. "And I promise to stand by your side through whatever comes, to love you faithfully, and to help make this ranch a home filled with joy again." They sealed their promises with another kiss before remounting their horses and continuing toward the ranch, toward home. The weeks that followed were filled with plans and preparations. Jack insisted on a proper courtship despite their living arrangement, making trips to Whispering Pines to escort Cassidy to dinner at the hotel restaurant or to attend the occasional social event. Mrs. Hernandez watched their romance with approving eyes, while the ranch hands good-naturedly teased their boss about his improved mood. By late September, with the cattle drive successfully completed and the ranch preparing for winter, Jack and Cassidy were married in a simple ceremony on the ridge overlooking the valley. Aunt Constance traveled from Whispering Pines for the occasion, as did the pastor and a few friends from town. Mrs. Hernandez decorated the house with wildflowers and prepared a feast that had the ranch hands talking for weeks afterward. Cassidy wore a dress of pale blue silk that Jack had ordered specially from Denver, with her auburn hair loose around her shoulders as he preferred it. Jack stood tall and handsome in a new black suit, his eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows beneath the vast Wyoming sky. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the pastor declared, his voice carried away by the mountain breeze. "You may kiss your bride." Jack needed no second invitation, sweeping Cassidy into a kiss that drew cheers and whistles from the assembled guests. As they broke apart, laughing, Cassidy caught a glimpse of pure happiness on Jack's face, a joy that matched the one bubbling in her own heart. The celebration continued well into the evening, with music and dancing in the yard outside the ranch house. As the night grew cooler, Jack led Cassidy away from the festivities, toward the small cabin he had prepared for them a short distance from the main house, a private retreat for their first weeks as husband and wife. "Are you happy, Mrs. Blackwood?" he asked as they walked hand in hand through the moonlit night. The name sent a thrill through Cassidy. Mrs. Blackwood, not a title to fear as Mrs. Reynolds had been, but one to cherish. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she answered truthfully. The cabin was cozy and welcoming, with a fire already burning in the stone hearth and fresh flowers on the table. Jack had thought of every detail, from the quilts folded at the foot of the bed to the bottle of champagne chilling in a bucket of well water. "It's perfect," Cassidy breathed, taking in the comfortable space that would be their sanctuary. Jack watched her with tender eyes. "You're perfect," he countered softly, "and I'm the luckiest man in the Wyoming Territory." Their first night as husband and wife was everything Cassidy had never known. Marriage could be gentle, passionate, and filled with mutual tenderness that healed the last of the wounds Thomas had inflicted on her heart. In Jack's arms, she found not possession or domination, but partnership and respect, a sharing of pleasure that left them both breathless and marveling at the bond between them. Afterward, as they lay tangled in the quilts, Jack's fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, Cassidy realized that the pain that had bent her double on that dusty trail months ago had led her, improbably, to the greatest joy she had ever known. "What are you thinking about?" Jack murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "About how sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead us to the best," she replied, shifting to look into his eyes. "If my wagon wheel hadn't broken, if you hadn't come along when you did, I'd like to think we would have found each other anyway," Jack said, his voice low and certain. "Some things are meant to be, Cassidy Blackwood, and you and I, we were written in the stars long before we ever met on that trail." The conviction in his voice made her smile. "I hope you're right." "I know I am," he assured her, pulling her closer. "And I plan to spend the rest of our lives proving it." As winter settled over the Blackwood Ranch, blanketing the valley in pristine white, life fell into a new rhythm for Jack and Cassidy. They moved back into the main house after their honeymoon retreat, taking over the master bedroom that Jack had avoided since Rebecca's death. Together, they packed away his first wife's belongings, not to erase her memory, but to make space for their new life together. "She would have liked you," Jack said as they carefully stored Rebecca's dresses in a cedar chest for safekeeping. "She was practical and kind like you, strong too." Cassidy smiled, touched by his openness about his first love. "I wish I could have known her and Sarah." Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful rather than pained. "I keep their portraits in my study. I'd like them to remain there if that's all right with you, not to dwell in the past but to honor it." "Of course," Cassidy agreed readily. "They'll always be part of who you are, Jack." "I would never want to change that." He pulled her into his arms, gratitude in his embrace. "How did I get so fortunate, finding a woman with such a generous heart?" "I believe you mentioned something about stars and destiny," Cassidy teased, earning a laugh and a kiss that quickly deepened into something more urgent. They were late to dinner that evening, arriving in the dining room with flushed cheeks and slightly mussed hair that had Mrs. Hernandez hiding a knowing smile behind her hand. Christmas brought Aunt Constance to the ranch as promised, along with a heavy snowfall that transformed the landscape into a winter wonderland. The house was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons, and the scent of Mrs. Hernandez's special holiday baking filled every room on Christmas Eve. As they sat before the fire in the parlor, Cassidy presented Jack with a small, carefully wrapped package. Inside was a hand-knitted baby's booty, tiny and perfect. Jack stared at it uncomprehendingly for a moment before understanding dawned in his eyes. "Cassidy, are you?" She nodded, her eyes shining with happy tears. "Dr. Marshall confirmed it yesterday when I was in town. We're going to have a baby, Jack, in early summer." Jack's expression transformed from shock to wonder to pure joy in the space of a heartbeat. With a whoop that startled everyone in the room, he lifted Cassidy from her chair and spun her in a circle, mindful of her condition even in his excitement. "Careful with my great niece or nephew, Mr. Blackwood," Aunt Constance admonished, though her smile belied her stern tone. Sorry, Jack laughed, setting Cassidy gently back on her feet but keeping her close in the circle of his arms. I can't believe, a baby. The news spread quickly through the ranch, bringing congratulations and increased pampering of the young mistress from everyone, especially Mrs. Hernandez, who immediately began planning special meals for the Bambino's health. As the weeks passed and winter gave way to spring, Cassidy's body changed, her slender form softening with the new life growing within her. Unlike her first pregnancy, which had been marked by fear and dread, this one was celebrated, each milestone met with Jack's wonder and devotion. He was there for every moment, the first flutter of movement, the first visible kick beneath her skin, the late-night cravings for Mrs. Hernandez's spicy stew. When Cassidy's fears about childbirth surfaced, memories of her miscarriage still raw, Jack arranged for the best midwife in the territory to attend her, a no-nonsense woman named Martha who had delivered hundreds of babies safely. "Your wife is strong and healthy," Martha assured Jack after examining Cassidy in her 6th month. "And the baby is positioned perfectly. There's every reason to expect a smooth delivery." Her words provided some comfort, though as Cassidy's due date approached, Jack's protective instincts intensified. He rearranged the ranch work to keep him close to the house, much to the amusement of his foreman, Charlie. "Boss, women have been having babies since the beginning of time," Charlie pointed out one afternoon as Jack fretted over Cassidy taking a short walk in the garden. "Mrs. Blackwood is tougher than you're giving her credit for." "I know she is," Jack admitted, "but I can't help worrying." "I've lost so much already." Charlie clapped him on the shoulder. "You won't lose her. That woman has too much to live for now, you, the baby, this ranch. She's found her home here just like you found yours again when she came into your life." The foreman's words rang true. Cassidy had indeed made the Blackwood Ranch her home, bringing new energy and ideas that had revitalized not just Jack, but the entire operation. Under her management, the household ran more efficiently than ever, and her suggestions for diversifying the ranch's income, adding a small orchard, increasing the chicken flock to sell eggs in town, breeding horses as well as cattle were already showing promise. June arrived with balmy weather and wildflowers carpeting the meadows. Cassidy, now in her final month of pregnancy, spent her days in the shade of the porch, her hands busy with knitting baby clothes while her mind was occupied with plans for the nursery that Jack had built adjacent to their bedroom. "What about names?" she asked one evening as they sat watching the sunset, her feet in his lap as he massaged them gently. "Have you thought about what we might call him or her?" Jack's hands continued their soothing work as he considered. "If it's a boy, I was thinking maybe James, after my father, or Joseph." "James Blackwood," Cassidy tested the name. "I like it," and for a girl, a soft smile played across Jack's face. "I thought perhaps Catherine, after your mother." Tears sprang to Cassidy's eyes at his thoughtfulness. "Catherine, yes, that would be perfect." The baby, however, had timing of its own. 3 days later, in the pre-dawn hours of a clear June morning, Cassidy woke to the first contractions. They were mild at first, easily manageable, and she let Jack sleep a while longer, knowing the day ahead would be long for both of them. When she finally woke him, his response was immediate and calm, surprising even himself. He sent a ranch hand galloping for Martha the midwife, helped Cassidy walk slowly around the bedroom as she had been instructed, and followed all of Mrs. Hernandez's directions for preparing the birthing room. Martha arrived by mid-morning, by which time Cassidy's contractions were coming regularly and with increasing intensity. "Right on schedule," the midwife approved after examining her. "This baby knows what it's doing. First ones can take their time, though, so settle in." Jack refused to leave Cassidy's side, holding her hand through each contraction, wiping her brow with a cool cloth and murmuring encouragement as the hours passed. By late afternoon, when Martha announced it was time to push, Cassidy was exhausted but determined. "You can do this, my love," Jack whispered, supporting her as she bore down with each contraction. "You're the strongest person I know." His faith in her gave Cassidy the last reserves of strength she needed. With a final, powerful effort, their child entered the world a healthy, robust girl with a head of dark hair and a cry that filled the room with its indignant vigor. "A daughter," Martha announced, placing the squalling infant on Cassidy's chest after cutting the cord. "And a fine one at that." Cassidy stared in wonder at the tiny, perfect face, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Hello, Catherine," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Jack leaned down, one arm around Cassidy, the other hand gently touching his daughter's downy head. "Catherine Rebecca Blackwood," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome home." The days that followed were a blur of joy and exhaustion as they adjusted to life with a newborn. Catherine, quickly nicknamed Cathy, proved to be a good-natured baby, with her father's blue eyes and her mother's determined spirit. The entire ranch celebrated her arrival, with even the most grizzled cowboys stopping by the house to offer awkward congratulations and handmade gifts. Aunt Constance arrived a week after the birth, bringing with her a beautiful handmade quilt and practical advice about infant care that proved invaluable. She stayed for a month, becoming an unexpected ally to Mrs. Hernandez in managing the household, while Cassidy recovered and bonded with her daughter. "You've done well for yourself, niece," Aunt Constance remarked one afternoon as they watched Jack walking in the garden with Cathy cradled carefully in his arms, pointing out butterflies to the infant who was far too young to understand, but seemed entranced by her father's voice nonetheless. "I have, haven't I?" Cassidy agreed, her heart full. "Though I can't take much credit. It was chance that brought me here, a broken wagon wheel and a passing cowboy. Chance, perhaps, but you recognized the opportunity when it came. Not everyone would have been brave enough to accept help from a stranger or to open their heart again after what you endured with Thomas." Cassidy considered this. "I suppose that's true, but Jack made it easy to be brave. He never pushed, never demanded, he just offered a new life. A safe ride home, and then he waited for me to choose." Aunt Constance nodded approvingly. "That's how you know a good man from a bad one. The bad ones take, the good ones offer, and then they wait." As summer ripened into another golden Wyoming autumn, life at the Blackwood Ranch settled into a new normal that revolved around little Cathy's schedule. Jack proved to be an attentive and doting father, often carrying his daughter with him around the ranch in a special sling Mrs. Hernandez had fashioned, showing her the horses and cattle and telling her stories about the land that would one day be hers. Cassidy found motherhood both more challenging and more rewarding than she had anticipated. There were difficult nights when Cathy wouldn't settle, days when balancing her responsibilities to the household and the baby seemed impossible. But there were also moments of such transcendent joy, Cathy's first real smile, the way she would fall asleep on Cassidy's chest, tiny hand clutching her mother's finger, that all the challenges faded in comparison. And through it all, there was Jack, steady as the mountains that framed their valley, patient and loving in ways that continually deepened Cassidy's appreciation for the man she had married. On the first anniversary of the day Jack had found her on the trail, bent over in pain and desperate for help, he surprised her with a special dinner after Cathy had been put to bed. Mrs. Hernandez had outdone herself with the meal, and the dining room was lit with candles that cast a warm, intimate glow. "What's the occasion?" Cassidy asked as Jack held her chair for her. "You don't remember," he teased, taking his own seat across from her. "1 year ago today, a broken wagon wheel changed my life forever," understanding dawned, and Cassidy smiled. "Has it been a year already? It feels both longer and shorter somehow." "The best year of my life," Jack said simply, raising his glass in a toast, "to broken wheels and new beginnings." "To safe rides home," Cassidy added, touching her glass to his. After dinner, Jack presented her with a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold locket, oval-shaped and engraved with intertwining vines. When Cassidy opened it, she found a tiny portrait of Cathy on one side and a miniature painting of the Blackwood Ranch on the other. "It's beautiful," she breathed, immediately fastening it around her neck. "I wanted you to always carry home with you," Jack explained, his eyes soft in the candlelight, and our greatest blessing." Cassidy reached across the table to take his hand. "Thank you, not just for the locket, but for everything. For stopping on that trail, for offering me shelter, for being patient while I healed." She squeezed his fingers. "For loving me when I didn't think I was lovable anymore." Jack brought her hand to his lips. "Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done, Cassidy Blackwood. And I intend to keep doing it for the rest of our days." As they sat together, hands entwined across the table, Cassidy reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the depths of despair on that dusty trail to the heights of joy in this home they had built together. From a woman broken by cruelty to one strengthened by love. From solitary pain to a family united in happiness. The broken wagon wheel that had seemed like disaster had instead been the first step on a path to salvation. And the cowboy who had found her, bent over in pain, had offered not just a safe ride home, but a home itself, a place of safety, of love, of belonging. "What are you thinking about?" Jack asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Cassidy smiled, the locket warm against her skin. "I'm thinking that sometimes what looks like the worst day of your life can actually be the best, you just can't see it yet." Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. "And sometimes, when you stop to help someone in trouble, you end up helping yourself more than you could have imagined." "To unexpected blessings," Cassidy proposed, raising her glass once more. "To love found in unlikely places," Jack countered, his blue eyes shining with the depth of his feelings for her. As their glasses clinked together, a soft cry came from the nursery, Cathy, awake and demanding attention. Jack and Cassidy exchanged smiles, the interruption not an annoyance but a reminder of the precious life they had created together. "I'll go," Jack said, rising from his chair. "You finish your wine." Cassidy watched him leave, her heart full to bursting with love for this man who had rescued her in more ways than one. Outside the window, the vast Wyoming sky was ablaze with stars, a testament to the endless possibilities that life could offer, even after the darkest times. 1 year ago, she had been lost in pain with no hope for the future. Now she was found, healed, and blessed with more love than she had ever thought possible. All because a cowboy had stopped to help a stranger in distress, offering a new life and a safe ride home. And what a beautiful life it had turned out to be.